All right, so today we're going to be diving into the world of global nutrition.
Okay.
We're trying to get a clear picture of just like where things stand right now.
Hmm.
And we've got some really great material to work with here.
Yeah.
We have excerpts from the 2022 Global Nutrition Report.
Oh, this is a good one.
So this report really focuses on stronger commitments for greater action,
Yeah, and it's about time, right?
which is fitting.
Like everyone is finally recognizing that we need to be tackling malnutrition
Yeah, yeah.
and that it's a serious issue.
It seems like everyone is kind of recognizing the urgency of it.
Yeah, and what I find really fascinating is that it's not just talk anymore.
Oh, really?
Like we're actually seeing a surge in commitments from all sorts of different players.
Oh, wow.
Governments, organizations, businesses.
So they're actually putting their money where their mouth is?
Yeah, well, to some extent,
Okay.
as with anything, the devil's in the details.
Mm-hmm.
There are some, surprising gaps in where those commitments are focused. And that's something that we definitely have to unpack.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, why are we seeing so much attention on certain issues?
Right, yeah.
And then, other really pressing issues are kind of being neglected.
Yeah, it seems a bit odd that certain things would be getting more attention than others.
Right.
Especially when it seems like, everything's connected.
Yeah.
And then, also just in the back of my mind, I keep hearing about this nutrition accountability framework.
Oh, yes.
What is that all about?
This is, I think, a pretty big deal.
Okay.
It's basically like, imagine, a global scoreboard for nutrition commitments.
Oh.
It's really there to make sure that those promises that people are making,
Uh-huh.
those organizations, governments, etc.,
Right.
they're actually clear.
Okay.
They're trackable,
Uh-huh.
and that they actually lead to results.
So it's not just like empty promises.
Right. No more vague pledges that just disappear.
Yeah, like we made this commitment and then nothing happened.
Right.
I like it.
Yeah, it's a way to hold people accountable
Yeah.
to actually making a difference.
Okay, I'm starting to see why you're excited about this.
It's a big step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But I think before we get too ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
we need to take a step back
Mm.
and just like paint the overall picture first.
Okay.
Like, what is the state of global nutrition right now?
Yeah. Where do things stand?
Exactly.
Yeah. Paint that picture for me.
So, the report, it doesn't sugarcoat anything.
Okay.
Poor diets and malnutrition,
Mm.
they're still massive challenges.
Right.
And they impact, not just individuals, but it impacts health,
Mm.
economies,
Yeah.
even the environment.
Wow.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
And, to make matters worse,
Mm-hmm.
the recent pandemic, the war in Ukraine,
All right.
and, the ongoing climate change,
Yeah.
these have only made things worse.
Right. So, like, how much worse are we talking?
Well, it's hard to quantify exactly,
Uh-huh.
but it's definitely exacerbated existing problems.
Yeah.
Disrupted supply chains,
Right.
increased food insecurity.
Yeah.
It had a ripple effect.
So it's not just like the immediate impacts of these events.
Right, it's the long-term consequences as well.
Okay, so that's pretty sobering.
It is. It's a lot to grapple with.
Yeah.
But, you mentioned earlier
Mm-hmm.
that there's been this surge in commitments.
Right. Right.
So is that the silver lining here?
Potentially. Yeah.
It could be.
Are we actually seeing that translate into, like, real action?
Yeah, I think we are starting to see a real shift towards action.
Okay.
We're moving beyond just awareness raising and pledges.
Uh-huh.
It seems like there's genuine momentum building
Uh-huh. Okay.
to actually tackle this issue head on.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, I think it's promising.
Okay, so what kind of commitments are we talking about here?
So in terms of concrete numbers,
Mm-hmm.
over 42 billion US dollars
Wow.
in financial commitments were made.
42 billion. That's
Huge number.
a serious chunk of change.
It's a significant increase from previous years.
Okay.
And it's not just coming from one place. It's
Mhm.
coming from governments,
Mm-hmm.
civil society organizations,
Okay.
businesses,
Yeah.
donors,
Right.
international organizations.
So everyone's kind of stepping up.
It seems like everyone is recognizing the importance of this.
Okay, so that's good.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction.
But I'm curious,
Yeah.
is there like a pattern to where this money's coming from
That's a really good question.
or where it's going?
Yeah.
Like, is it evenly distributed?
So one of the interesting things the report highlights
Mm-hmm.
is that governments from low and middle income countries, they're actually leading the charge.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they're focusing heavily on undernutrition
Uh-huh.
within their own populations.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, they're kind of prioritizing the most pressing issues.
Right, the things that they're dealing with.
Right, exactly,
away.
on the ground.
And this shift likely stems from a growing recognition. Oh,
But that investing in nutrition, it's not just a moral imperative.
right.
It's actually a really smart economic one.
Oh, interesting.
Healthier populations,
Right.
more productive populations.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense if people are healthier,
Right.
then they can work more,
Exactly.
contribute more to the economy.
Exactly. So it's a win-win situation.
So it's not just about, like doing the right thing.
Right.
It's actually about, like boosting the economy as well.
It's about long-term sustainability
Yeah.
and prosperity.
Okay, so it's kind of like a holistic approach.
It is. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of these issues.
So we're seeing some really positive trends in terms of greater action and financial commitment.
Yeah.
But, as you mentioned earlier, there are some concerns about the direction of those efforts.
Exactly.
We can't just assume that because there's more money being thrown at it,
Right.
that it's actually going to the right places.
We need to be critical
Yeah.
and look at where those commitments are actually being made.
And are those the areas that need it the most?
Exactly.
So what are some of the gaps that you were talking about?
So one of the key findings of the report
Mm-hmm.
is that there's a heavy emphasis on governance
Okay.
and undernutrition.
Uh-huh.
Now, this is understandable
Yeah.
given the stakeholders who are involved,
Mm-hmm.
but the concern is that we're seeing relatively little attention
Okay.
being paid to some crucial areas,
Like what?
like poor diets in general,
Oh, okay.
not just undernutrition, but like the overall quality of diets
Mm-hmm.
globally.
Right. So that would include like, overeating.
Exactly. Overconsumption of processed foods,
Yeah.
sugary drinks, all those
All
things.
the stuff that we know is not good for us.
Exactly.
And yet we're not really seeing a focus on that.
And then there's the issue of obesity and diet-related non-communicable diseases,
Right.
like diabetes, heart disease, certain types of cancer.
Right.
These are major health challenges, and they're directly linked to diet.
Right. But those are the things that seems to be getting less attention.
They're not getting the attention they deserve.
And then, the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that there's also not much focus on food and nutrition security.
You would think,
Yeah.
given everything that's going on in the world right now,
Right. With the pandemic,
yeah,
the war in Ukraine,
climate change,
climate change.
you would think this would be front and center.
You would think so.
Right, because those are all directly impacting food systems.
Yeah. And people's ability to get like healthy, nutritious food.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just like a basic human right.
It is, and it's becoming increasingly fragile in many parts of the world.
So what do you think is driving this disconnect?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
I think it's likely a combination of factors.
Okay.
Undernutrition,
Mm-hmm.
that has historically been the primary focus.
Right.
And it's easier to measure, it's easier to track progress in that area.
Right. So maybe that's why we're seeing more focus on that.
It could be,
Yeah,
it's
it's
easier to show results.
Yeah, yeah.
And then also, many of the stakeholders who are driving these commitments,
Mm-hmm.
particularly governments in lower-income countries,
Right.
they're naturally prioritizing
Yeah.
the most pressing issues within their own populations.
Okay.
They're dealing with immediate crises,
Right.
and it's understandable that they would focus on those first.
Right. You got to take care of your own people first.
Exactly.
But it does suggest that we need to broaden our perspective a bit.
I completely agree.
Like we can't just be focusing on one aspect of nutrition
Right.
and ignoring the others,
Especially when they're all interconnected.
especially given how connected they are.
Right. You can't address undernutrition
Mhm.
without also looking at the overall quality of diets
Right.
and the availability of nutritious food.
Yeah.
And you can't ignore the impact of food insecurity
Right.
on all of these issues.
We have to take a more holistic approach.
We do, and that's where I think the nutrition accountability framework
Oh.
can really make a difference.
Okay. Yeah. Bring it back to that.
It's about ensuring that commitments are comprehensive
Mm-hmm.
and that they address all aspects of nutrition,
Right.
not just one or two.
So tell me a little bit more about this framework.
Okay, so the NAF
Uh-huh.
uses something called the Nutrition Action Classification System
Okay.
to categorize commitments.
Okay.
So it makes it easier to identify those gaps
Mm-hmm.
and prioritize efforts.
Okay.
So are we focusing enough on enabling actions,
Okay.
policy actions, impact actions?
So it's kind of breaking it down into these categories.
Yeah, it's a way to organize the information
Okay.
and ensure that we're covering all the bases.
Got it. Okay.
And then there's also the Nutrition Action Smartness Index.
Okay.
And this measures how trackable and complete those commitments actually are.
Oh, okay.
So is it just a vague promise?
Right.
Or is there a specific plan with timelines, with measurable outcomes?
Yeah.
And this helps to make sure that, those billions of dollars that are being pledged, they're actually being used effectively.
So it's not just about the commitment itself.
Right.
It's about, like, the quality of the commitment.
Exactly. It's about making sure those commitments lead to measurable results.
I like that, yeah.
It's about accountability.
Okay, so before we dive into the specifics of the framework,
Okay.
I want to kind of unpack the different players and their roles
Good idea.
a little bit more.
Yeah, let's break it down.
So we've talked about governments, organizations, businesses. What did the report actually reveal about the specific commitment?
So let's start with governments.
Okay.
Since they're kind of the main players here.
Yeah, they're leading the charge.
Exactly.
So what are they doing?
So as we discussed earlier, governments from lower income countries, they're primarily focused on undernutrition.
Right.
Which aligns with the challenges that they face.
Makes sense.
But what about high-income governments?
Yeah, what are they doing?
What role are they playing?
Besides just donating money.
Well, the report actually calls for them to step up.
Okay.
And make commitments, not just as donors, but for their own populations as well.
Oh, interesting.
Because, issues like poor diets,
Right.
obesity, diet-related diseases,
Yeah.
these aren't just problems in low-income countries.
Right. They're global issues.
Exactly. It's a global challenge.
So they need to kind of lead by example.
Exactly. They need to walk the walk.
Yeah.
Not just talk the talk.
Show that nutrition is a priority for them.
Right. And that it's not just something for developing nations to worry about.
Okay, I like that.
It's about global solidarity.
So what about civil society organizations?
Okay, so CSOs, they have a really strong presence in the nutrition landscape. And they're often focused on capacity building and advocating for better nutrition care services.
Okay, so they're kind of like the boots on the ground.
They are. They're working in communities, pushing for change from the bottom up.
Yeah, that's crucial work.
Absolutely. They're essential.
Okay, so then we have businesses.
The private sector.
Yeah, the private sector.
This is where things get a little more complicated.
Okay, because businesses are often seen as part of the problem.
Right. They're often blamed for producing and marketing unhealthy foods.
Yeah, exactly.
And contributing to, the obesity epidemic and all of that.
Right, so are they actually stepping up?
Well, it's a mixed bag.
Okay.
Their commitments primarily revolve around internal corporate policies.
Okay.
To improve nutrition within their own supply chains and workplaces.
Okay.
So, reducing sugar in their products.
Right. So that's great.
Reducing unhealthy fats.
But it's still kind of like internal.
It is. It's very much focused on their own operations.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily like advocating for broader systemic change.
Exactly. And that's what some critics are calling for. They're saying that businesses need to use their influence to advocate for policy changes that promote healthier food environments.
That's a good point.
They have a lot of power.
Yeah.
And they could really make a difference.
Okay, so what about donors?
All right, so donors, they play a critical role in all of this.
Okay.
They're the ones who are mobilizing a lot of the financial resources.
Right, so they're kind of the bank.
They are. They're the ones providing a lot of the funding
for
these nutrition initiatives.
But, that raises some questions about sustainability.
Right. What happens if those funding streams dry up?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a valid concern.
What happens if those donors decide to pull out?
Exactly. It highlights the need for more diversified funding.
Right.
And also, we need to be mindful of dependency. We don't want countries or organizations to become overly reliant on donor funding.
Right. It needs to be sustainable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to build local capacity.
Yeah.
And ensure that these efforts can continue.
Yeah.
Even if donor funding changes.
Okay. And then lastly, we have the international organizations.
All right. So these organizations, they're kind of like the architects and coordinators of the global nutrition landscape.
Okay.
They're supporting global nutrition governance. They're promoting policy development.
Okay.
And they're facilitating collaboration.
So they're kind of making sure that everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. They're trying to bring everyone together and work towards shared goals.
I like it. Okay.
So it's a complex ecosystem.
It is.
With lots of different players.
Yeah.
All contributing in their own way.
Okay, so we have a pretty good understanding of, like, the players and their roles.
We've laid the groundwork.
But it sounds like there's a real need
Definitely.
to move beyond just financial commitments and address those like systemic issues that are driving malnutrition.
We need to go deeper.
Right.
And that's where I think the report's recommendations really come into play.
Okay, let's hear those recommendations.
All right, so that's what we'll be diving into next.
Awesome.
The report outlines some very specific recommendations for creating stronger, more effective, and hopefully more transformative actions.
Okay, I'm ready to hear it.
All right, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
We're going to talk about how we can actually make a difference.
Awesome.
And move the needle on this issue.
Okay, I'm excited.
Me too. This is where it gets really interesting.
Let's do it.
Welcome back.
Okay, so we've established the players.
Right.
The playing field. Now let's zoom in on some specifics.
Okay.
The report analyzes commitments by country income levels, right?
It does.
Does that reveal anything interesting?
Well, one striking finding is that 90%.
Wow, 90%?
Of the commitment goals came from governments in low and lower middle income countries.
That makes sense considering, you know, the prevalence of undernutrition.
Yeah, it's where the need is greatest.
In those regions, yeah.
Exactly.
But what kinds of commitments are they making?
Are they just throwing money at the problem? Or
right. Is it strategic?
Is there a more strategic approach?
Yeah.
Well, it seems to be a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
We're seeing commitments to enhance leadership, improve governance, and boost funding for nutrition initiatives.
So they're tackling it from multiple angles.
They are. They're recognizing that it's not just about providing food.
Yeah.
It's about creating an environment where nutrition is prioritized.
Okay, interesting.
And interestingly, high-burden countries, the ones facing multiple forms of malnutrition,
right,
they were particularly active in creating national nutrition action plans.
Oh, wow.
And strengthening coordination mechanisms.
So they're really taking the lead.
They're recognizing the urgency of the situation.
What about countries with lower burdens of malnutrition?
Okay, so for those countries, their focus leans more towards policy-driven actions.
Oh, okay, so it's a little different.
It's a different approach.
Yep, yeah.
For instance, they're prioritizing improvements to nutrition care services.
Okay.
So integrating nutrition into healthcare systems.
Oh.
Things like that.
So it's more about like preventative measures.
It is. It's about creating a system that supports good nutrition.
Interesting.
Rather than just reacting to problems.
Okay, so different countries, different approaches.
Different challenges require different solutions.
Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's not one size fits all.
So speaking of tailored solutions, how do all these commitments actually align with those global nutrition targets everyone keeps talking about?
Right, those big, ambitious goals.
Are we on track to meet them?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
The report actually assesses how these commitments stack up against the World Health Assembly's global nutrition targets for 2025.
Okay.
And the good news is...
Okay, there's good news.
There is some good news.
Okay.
There's strong alignment with targets related to maternal, infant, and young child nutrition.
Oh, good.
So we're seeing a lot of commitments aimed at reducing childhood stunting, wasting anemia, as well as initiatives to increase exclusive breastfeeding rates.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, all of these align with the global targets for maternal and infant nutrition.
That's definitely a win.
It is. It shows that there's a real focus on those early years.
Right, where nutrition is so critical.
Exactly. Those first 1,000 days of life.
Right. They're so important.
Absolutely crucial.
However...
There's always a but, isn't there?
I was going to say, it seems like you're about to say but.
You know me too well.
Yeah.
The but is that commitments targeting diet-related non-communicable diseases like adult obesity, diabetes, raised blood pressure.
Yeah.
These are lagging behind.
So while we're making progress on undernutrition,
yes,
we're kind of neglecting this rising tide.
It's like we're fighting one fire.
Of diet-related diseases, yeah.
And ignoring another one that's growing bigger.
Yeah, it's almost like trying to bail out a sinking ship.
Ooh, like that.
Yeah, like ignoring a giant hole in the hull.
Yeah, it's a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the need for a course correction.
Right.
We can't treat these issues in isolation.
Yeah.
You know, focusing on undernutrition is important, but we can't ignore the fact that obesity rates are skyrocketing.
Right.
And that diet-related diseases are on the rise.
Yeah, we have to look at it holistically.
We do. A more integrated approach is essential.
if we want to create a truly healthy future for everyone.
Exactly. For everyone.
Okay, and this is where the nutrition accountability framework comes into play again, right?
This is where it all comes together.
Yeah.
Because the EV is not just about tracking commitments. It's about making sure those commitments are actually addressing the full spectrum of nutrition challenges.
Okay.
So it helps to ensure that those billions of dollars that are being committed, they actually lead to improved nutrition outcomes on the ground.
Okay. Tangible results.
Exactly. It's about translating those promises into a healthier future for everyone.
I like it.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool.
So speaking of healthier futures, I'm curious about the specific nutrition interventions.
Right, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
That the report highlights.
Okay.
You know, it's not just about setting targets.
Right, it's about what works.
And making commitments.
Exactly.
But also about understanding what actually works.
What actually moves the needle.
To improve nutrition.
Yeah, and how do we know if something is effective?
Right.
How do we measure that?
Yeah, because I imagine there's no magic bullet.
There's no quick fix, unfortunately.
Right, but are there certain interventions?
There are.
That have proven to be particularly effective?
And that's what the report delves into.
Okay.
So remember that nutrition action classification system we talked about?
Yeah, the enabling actions, policy actions, impact actions?
It categorizes commitments into those 3 categories.
Right.
And this helps to clarify what types of interventions are being implemented. And it allows for a more nuanced analysis of their impact.
Okay, so those categories help to kind of organize the information.
They do. They provide a framework for understanding what's being done.
And how it's being done.
And how effective it is.
Okay, so just to recap.
Yeah.
Enabling actions are about creating the right environment for interventions to succeed.
Exactly. It's about laying the foundation.
So it's like setting the stage.
It is. It's about creating the conditions that enable those interventions to have the greatest impact.
So for instance...
So for example, many commitments focus on strengthening leadership and governance for nutrition.
Okay.
So this could involve establishing national nutrition policies, coordinating efforts across different sectors.
Right, so getting everyone on the same page.
Exactly, breaking down those silos.
Okay.
Building capacity within relevant government agencies.
So making sure that people have the knowledge and the resources.
Right, equipping them with the tools they need
to do their jobs.
To implement these interventions effectively.
Okay, so it's kind of like the behind-the-scenes work.
It is. It's the groundwork that needs to be done.
It needs to be laid.
To make everything else possible.
And then we have policy actions.
All right, so policy actions. These involve implementing specific policies and programs that directly target improvements in nutrition.
So it's more about the concrete steps.
It is. It's about taking action. To change behaviors and improve access to nutritious food.
So for example?
So for example, food fortification programs. Adding essential vitamins and minerals to staple foods.
Oh, right.
School feeding initiatives that provide nutritious meals to children. Regulations on the marketing of unhealthy foods.
Oh, right. That's a big one.
Yeah, especially to children.
Especially to kids. Yeah.
Limiting their appeal.
Yeah, because they're the ones who are most susceptible.
Exactly. They're more vulnerable to those marketing tactics.
To that advertising.
Exactly.
Okay, so those are all policy actions.
Those are all examples of policy actions.
And then lastly,
we have impact actions.
Impact actions.
Which are all about directly addressing those different forms of malnutrition.
Okay, so this is like getting right to the heart of the problem.
It is. It's about tackling those nutritional deficiencies head on.
So what do those look like?
So this could include programs to reduce stunting and wasting in children.
Okay.
Initiatives to improve dietary diversity.
Right, making sure people are getting
a wider range of nutrients.
Yeah, a balanced diet.
Exactly. Not just enough calories.
Right.
But the right kinds of calories. And interventions to address specific micronutrient deficiencies.
Okay, so like iron supplements.
Exactly. Providing iron supplements to combat anemia.
Okay, so it's like a three-pronged approach.
It is. It's about creating the right environment, implementing policies, and taking direct action.
Okay, so did the report actually analyze?
It did.
How commitments are distributed across these categories?
Yes, and the findings were quite interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Almost half of the commitments.
Wow, almost half.
Fell into the category of enabling actions.
Oh, wow.
This underscores the importance of creating that right environment.
Right, like we were saying, you got to have that foundation.
You need that solid base.
Yeah.
Without strong leadership, effective coordination,
yeah,
sufficient capacity,
yeah,
even the best interventions can struggle.
It's like building a house.
Exactly.
You need a solid foundation.
You can't just put up walls and a roof.
Before you can start putting up walls and a roof.
Without a foundation, it's all going to crumble.
Exactly. It's not going to work.
Right.
What about the split between policy and impact actions?
Okay, so those were fairly evenly distributed.
Okay.
With each accounting for roughly a quarter of the commitment goals.
So it's kind of like a two-pronged approach.
It is. It's about tackling the problem from both ends.
Okay.
Changing the food environment through policy and directly addressing malnutrition through programs.
I like it.
It's a more balanced approach.
So this is giving me a much better understanding of how these interventions actually work.
Good, that's what we're aiming for.
And how they fit into the broader picture.
It's all connected.
Of global nutrition efforts.
It's a complex system.
But we've talked a lot about commitments, interventions.
Yes.
And I can't help but wonder,
yeah,
who's footing the bill for all of this?
The money question.
Yeah, follow the money.
Right, because commitments are great. But they need to be backed up by financial resources.
Exactly.
So the report analyzes the financial commitments.
Let's hear it. Who's putting their money where their mouth is?
All right, so the biggest player is donors.
Okay, yeah.
They committed a whopping $26.3 billion US.
Wow, that's the lion's share.
It is. They're the major funders.
Of the total funding pledge.
Of global nutrition efforts.
Okay, so that's great. But again, it raises those questions about sustainability.
Always a but.
What happens if those funding streams dry up?
It's a valid concern.
What happens if those donors decide to pull out?
It could derail progress.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need for a more diversified funding base.
Okay.
We can't solely rely on the generosity of donors.
Right. What about governments?
Okay, so governments...
Are they investing?
They pledged $13.3 billion US.
Okay.
Primarily for domestic initiatives.
Okay, so within their own countries.
Exactly. So this includes things like boosting budgets for nutrition programs.
Okay.
Strengthening social safety nets.
Right, to make sure that people have access to food.
To nutritious food.
Yeah.
And investing in nutrition-sensitive agriculture.
Okay.
Which is basically about producing food.
Yeah.
That is both plentiful
right.
and nutritious.
So it's not just about quantity.
Exactly. It's about quality as well.
Okay. So it's kind of a combination of external aid and internal investment.
It is. It's a shared responsibility.
Which is good to see.
It's the ideal scenario.
So what about the other players?
Okay. So international organizations committed $2.4 billion.
Okay.
And civil society organizations pledged $567 million.
Okay.
Now, the private sector...
Yeah, the private sector again.
Their financial contributions were relatively small.
How small are we talking?
$54 million US.
Oh, wow. That seems...
Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket.
Pretty insignificant compared to the others.
It is, and it raises questions about their commitment.
Right. You'd think they'd be more invested.
You would think so.
Given their role in the food system.
They have a huge influence on what we eat.
Yeah, but the report analyzes more than just the dollar amounts, right?
It does. It goes deeper.
It looks at how those funds are actually allocated.
Exactly.
Across those different action categories.
Because it's not just about how much money.
Right. It's about where it's going.
It's about how it's being used.
Yeah. So where is the money actually going?
Okay, so a large portion of the funding is being directed towards enabling actions.
Oh, okay.
Particularly those focused on strengthening leadership and governance.
Okay. Which makes sense, right?
It does. It aligns with what we discussed earlier.
About the importance of having that foundation.
About creating that enabling environment. It's about investing in the foundation.
Right. So that other efforts can build on that.
Exactly. It's about ensuring strong leadership, effective coordination, and sufficient capacity within governments and organizations.
Okay, but it can't all be about enabling actions.
It can't.
Are we seeing enough funding for those policy and impact actions?
So this is where we see a potential gap.
Oh, really?
Yes, we are seeing substantial funding for impact actions, particularly those targeting undernutrition programs to reduce stunting, wasting, micronutrient deficiencies.
Yeah.
These are receiving a lot of support.
But what about policy?
Policy actions, there's a potential blind spot there.
Really? Because I thought we were just saying how important those policy interventions are.
They are crucial
for creating lasting change in the food environment.
Absolutely. But it seems that funding priorities aren't quite reflecting that.
Oh, wow.
So we need to invest more in policies that promote healthy diets
and
sustainable food systems.
That makes sense.
if we want to create a world where everyone has access to nutritious food.
Because otherwise we're just addressing the symptoms.
We're putting a Band-Aid on the problem.
And not the root causes.
Exactly. We need to address the underlying causes of malnutrition.
It's like we're focusing on treating malnutrition without preventing it in the first place.
Exactly. We need a more balanced approach to finding, investing in both immediate interventions and long-term solutions.
Okay, so this has been really eye-opening.
It's complex.
This deep dive into the financial aspects of the report.
It's about making sure those funds are being used effectively.
Yeah, because we need to be strategic and intentional.
Absolutely. We can't just throw money at the problem.
About how we allocate resources.
Don't hope for the best.
For nutrition,
we need a plan.
If we want to achieve those global targets.
A strategic plan.
Okay, and that brings us back to the importance of accountability.
Always.
We need mechanisms in place to track how those funds are being used.
And to make sure they're actually making a difference.
And whether they're actually leading to improved nutrition outcomes.
Outcomes are key.
Right.
It's not just about outputs.
And this is where the nutrition accountability framework comes in.
This is where the NF shines.
Right.
Because it promotes transparency. It tracks progress.
Okay.
And it helps to ensure that those financial commitments translate into tangible results.
Okay, I'm liking this framework more and more.
It's a game changer.
So this has been a great discussion.
It has. We've covered a lot.
We've gone from the overall trends,
the big picture,
to specific interventions,
the detail,
even the financial aspect,
the money trail
of global nutrition efforts.
We've left no stone unturned.
But there's one key player we haven't really explored in depth yet.
Oh, you're right.
And that's the private sector.
The elephant in the room.
Yeah, so we've touched upon their commitments,
briefly,
but I think it's worth delving a little deeper.
I agree. Let's unpack that.
Into their role.
The private sector.
The challenges they face.
It's a complicated one.
And the unique opportunities they have.
Because they do have a lot of potential.
To make a difference.
To be part of the solution.
All right, so let's talk about the private sector. Okay, so we're back and ready to kind of wrap up our deep dive into the 2022 Global Nutrition Report.
It's been a journey.
It has.
A lot to unpack.
Yeah, we've covered the landscape, the players.
The challenges.
The challenges, but what about the solutions?
That's the most important part.
Yeah.
Right? We can't just focus on the problems.
Right.
We need to talk about how to fix them.
So what does the report say?
Well, the report lays out some very specific recommendations for how we can collectively step up our game.
Okay, let's hear them.
When it comes to global nutrition.
Where do we even begin to tackle such a complex issue?
Right. It can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
But the report breaks it down into manageable steps.
Okay, good.
So one of the most crucial recommendations is broadening the base of stakeholders who are making concrete commitments.
Okay, so more people need to be involved.
More people, more organizations.
Yeah.
We've talked about the need for everyone to have skin in the game, but the report specifically calls out high-income governments.
High-income governments, okay.
You mean beyond just being donors?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because they have a tendency to just write checks and think that their job is done.
Right.
But the report says no. They need to see themselves as more than just funders, and they need to start making commitments for their own populations as well.
Oh, interesting.
Because issues like poor diets, obesity, diet-related diseases, these aren't just problems in low-income countries.
Oh, we see them everywhere.
They're global issues.
Yeah.
So high-income governments need to lead by example.
Right. Got to walk the walk.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
Okay, I like that.
And within each country,
it
can't just be the national government taking action.
Oh,
It needs to be local governments, businesses, community organizations.
So everyone needs to be involved.
Everyone has a role to play.
Okay, so it's about creating that shared responsibility.
That sense of collective action.
That we've been talking about.
Exactly.
But it sounds like the report goes beyond just getting more people involved.
It does.
It also calls for a shift in the types of commitments being made.
You're right. It's not enough to just pledge money.
Right, when we need to see some action.
Or to just focus on one specific area.
Yeah.
The report urges stakeholders to prioritize transformative policies.
Transformative policies.
Within food and health systems.
So this is about systemic change.
This is about addressing the root causes.
Okay, less talk, more action.
Less talk, more action, exactly.
But what do those transformative policies actually look like?
What are some concrete examples?
Yeah, give me some examples.
All right, so one major area of focus is food security.
Food security, okay.
But not just in the traditional sense of ensuring everyone has enough to eat.
Right, right.
The report calls for a more nuanced approach that prioritizes nutrition security.
Nutrition security, so it's not just about filling bellies.
It's not just about quantity.
Yeah.
It's about quality.
It's about making sure that the food is actually good for them.
Exactly. It's about nourishing their bodies.
Yeah, food that nourishes their bodies and their minds.
Right, food that promotes health and well-being.
Okay, so how do we achieve that?
So this might involve policies that support sustainable and diversified agriculture.
Okay, so making a wider variety of nutritious foods available.
Exactly, increasing access to fruits, vegetables, whole grains.
Right, all the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
And then what?
Or policies that promote access to healthy and affordable food options.
Okay, so making it easier for people to actually make those good choices.
Right, because healthy food shouldn't be a luxury.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It should be accessible to everyone.
And then, of course,
there's the contentious issue.
I was going to say, this is a big one.
Of regulating the marketing of unhealthy foods.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly to children.
Especially to children.
Because we know that children are particularly vulnerable.
To those marketing tactics.
Those ads.
Yeah, they're bombarded with them.
And it's shaping their dietary habits.
Yeah, from a very young age.
From a very young age.
It's a tough battle, though.
It is. Because there are powerful interests who benefit from the status quo.
Right, right.
But it's a battle worth fighting.
Yeah, because we can't just leave it up to individuals to navigate a food environment that's saturated with unhealthy options.
That's designed to make them crave those unhealthy options.
Yeah, exactly.
So we need to create a more level playing field.
Okay, I'm with you there.
But it sounds like the report also looks beyond food systems.
It does.
It recognizes the crucial role of healthcare.
Oh, yeah.
In addressing nutrition.
Okay, so what do we do there?
So one key recommendation is universal access to integrated nutrition care services within health systems.
Okay, so that's a mouthful.
It is. But basically,
what does that actually mean?
It means making nutrition a core component of healthcare.
So it's not just something that's like
an afterthought?
Yeah, an afterthought or like...
Oh, yeah, by the way, you should eat your vegetables.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's about integrating it.
Into every aspect of healthcare.
Preventative care to treatment.
Okay, so what kind of things are we talking about here?
This might involve things like integrating nutrition counseling into primary care.
Okay.
Providing nutritional support to pregnant women and new mothers.
Right. Yeah, those are critical times.
Absolutely.
When nutrition is especially important.
And addressing malnutrition in hospital settings. Yeah. Because often people who are hospitalized are not getting the nutrition they need.
Right. They're not eating properly.
They're not eating enough.
Yeah.
They're not eating the right things.
Okay, so it's really about recognizing that nutrition is fundamental to good health.
Exactly.
And it should be integrated into our healthcare systems.
For the very beginning.
Okay. I like it, but we can't forget about those persistent gaps.
We can't.
That we discussed earlier.
Those are still there.
You know, particularly the lack of focus on food and nutrition security.
Right, that's a major concern.
In the face of the current global context.
Because the world is changing.
Yeah, everything's happening.
There are so many challenges.
Pandemics.
Conflicts.
Climate change.
Climate change, economic instability.
Yeah, it's a lot.
All of these are putting immense pressure on food systems.
Around the world.
So ensuring that everyone has access to safe, nutritious, affordable food.
Right. That's more crucial than ever.
It's essential for survival.
It's a basic human right.
It is.
But how do we actually address this?
That's the question.
Like, how do we ensure food security in such an uncertain world?
Well, the report calls for a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
So in the short term, governments need to prioritize social safety nets and food assistance programs.
So making sure that people have enough to eat.
Right, providing a safety net for those who are most vulnerable.
But we can't just rely on handouts.
We can't. It's not a sustainable solution.
Right.
We need long-term solutions.
Yeah, we need to address the root causes.
That build resilience into our food systems.
Okay, so what does that look like?
So we're talking about investing in climate-smart agriculture.
Climate smart,
Promoting diversification of food sources. Strengthening local food systems.
Okay, so less reliance on those global supply chains.
Exactly, because those are vulnerable to disruption.
Right, we've seen that.
We've seen that with the pandemic.
During the pandemic, yeah.
We need to create more localized and resilient food systems.
Yeah, that can withstand shocks.
That can weather the storm.
But it's not just about producing more food.
Right, it's not just about quantity.
We also need to address the demand side.
The demand side of the equation.
Okay, so what are we talking about there?
So we're talking about policies aimed at promoting healthy diets.
Okay.
And reducing food waste.
Right, so like educating consumers.
Empowering consumers to make informed choices.
And reduce the amount of food that ends up in landfills.
Because food waste is a huge problem.
It is.
It's a waste of resources, and it contributes to climate change.
So it's about creating a food system.
That's right.
That is sustainable, equitable.
And nourishes everyone.
And most importantly, nourishes everyone.
That's the ultimate goal.
This has been incredibly insightful.
It's been a deep dive.
This deep dive into the report's recommendations.
A lot of information.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But hopefully it's been helpful.
It has. And, you know, it's clear that we have a lot of work to do.
We do. There's no denying that.
If we want to create a world where everyone has access to the nutrition they need to thrive.
Where everyone can reach their full potential.
Yeah, but the report gives me hope.
Me too.
It provides a roadmap, a way forward.
It shows us that change is possible.
It's not just a bunch of doom and gloom.
It's a call to action.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
We have the knowledge.
Here's the problem.
We have the tools.
Here's some solutions.
Now let's get to work.
Let's do it.
It's a call to action for all of us.
Yeah, not just governments and organizations.
Governments, businesses, civil society organizations.
Yeah.
Individuals.
Everyone.
We all have a role to play.
So it comes back to that idea of shared responsibility.
Collective action.
That we've been talking about.
Because our dietary choices, our lifestyles, our advocacy efforts, they all contribute to the broader nutrition landscape.
Yeah, it all adds up.
Every little bit counts.
So what are some things that individuals can do?
Well, we can start by making informed choices about the food we buy and eat.
Okay.
We can support businesses that are committed to sustainability and nutrition.
Okay.
We can advocate for policies that promote healthy food environments.
Get involved in our communities.
We can educate ourselves and others.
Right. Knowledge is power.
And we can use our voices to demand change.
Yeah. Hold our leaders accountable.
Exactly. Because ultimately, this is about creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
And where nutrition is no longer a barrier.
To health and well-being.
That's a great note to end on.
It's been a pleasure.
It has. This has been a fantastic deep dive.
I hope our listeners have found it informative.
Into the 2022 Global Nutrition Report.
And inspiring.
And inspiring. Yes, we've explored the challenges.
We've delved into the complexities.
The commitments.
The solutions.
The innovation.
And most importantly, the opportunities for action.
So remember,
nutrition is everyone's business.
It's not just for experts.
It's not just for policymakers.
It's for all of us.
It's about our health, our well-being,
our future,
our collective future.
So let's do our part to make a difference.
Let's create a healthier world.
That's a wrap on our deep dive.
It's been a journey.
Into the 2022 Global Nutrition Report.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope you found it informative and most importantly, motivating.
Stay curious. Stay informed.
Stay nourished.
And until next time.
We'll see you later.